Okay, I think I'm good. I'll just mute myself. Okay. Yeah, cool. So, I guess since last time, I haven't ended up doing that much. I didn't write a whole bunch about goals. I know we talked about that.
Uh-huh.
I've written a little bit. I did end up, what do you call it? So in terms of the speedrunning thing, I sort of, yeah, I thought what you said was interesting enough that I wanted to try it in terms of like mastering something to the point of perfection, sort of thing. That's what I remember at least. Um,
Okay, how'd that go?
so it's going better. So I mean, I
What's
think
your time at?
2 minutes. So the world record's 157.
Yeah.
Um, so what I've spent a lot of time doing though is, I mean, actually, it might be worth. I can bring it up pretty quick if I can find it. So just that this will be quicker than explaining anything. Um, oh. So I ended up like modding the game pretty heavily. Not like when I say pretty heavily, I mean in terms of speedrunning features. So the loading time is reduced by about 10 seconds. And then if I hit backspace, it'll restart the thing, or should restart the thing.
I see.
Oh yeah. Oops. Oh, I think yeah. There's a bug that I've done with this thing. If it decides to
That
load.
that kind of stuff is problematic with speedruns, for competitive categories because you have to be able to prove somehow that none of your changes give you any sort of advantage whatsoever. Or you have to do your
Um,
actual runs on an unmodded version.
yeah. So we were talking about that. I mean, there are three of us in the community, that being the mod and the other guy and me. Um, the Anyway, we were starting to discuss it. It's all the physics are the same, so it's not really too much of a problem to practice on it. But I know that like the other guy has done getting over it with or with whatever the title is. Anyway, they actually have a similar modded version where they have the timer up in the top right. It's in the game. Anyway, but I guess the point of that is that I got like I let myself get quite distracted by like fun side things, I guess. Um,
Yeah, coding stuff is fine, but it's something you already have experience with. It's not the novel aspect of this.
there was actually some novelty in the sense that it's like I've never played with Unity stuff before.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I'm sure, but
but
it's a category you're familiar with, like learning a new
yes, yeah,
coding thing.
yeah. Anyway, so I probably spent, I don't know, 3 times as much time sort of working on the other stuff than actually practicing, sort of combined across all the rest of it. Maybe even more than that. Anyway, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that type of stuff it can get, if your goal is a good time, it gets really inefficient when you spend a lot of time on side aspects, sort of before you actually practice much and see that you're going to practice much. As
yeah, I
opposed
think
to
that's,
like, first play for 10 hours, then do 1 hour of supporting work, then play for another 10 hours, and do the support stuff more gradually. Is It helps make sure the investment is actually used.
yeah, I think I have a problem with that sometimes in general, um, where I'll overwork on something and not actually be able to get a return. Um, yeah, it just occurred to me that that happens with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
it's pretty common. There's a lot of people in gaming communities who like to quote theory craft a lot of stuff rather than actually play the game and get good at it, for example.
yeah. Um, yeah. So that was, I don't know, probably the majority of the past 2 days sort of thing. I don't know. I've sort of like quite enjoyed not doing stuff for a bit. Um,
Oh, for a break.
yeah, I I don't know. It's sort of actually I still have a problem with like I don't feel good about taking a break. I'm sort of glad that I've been taking a bit of a break because I've solved some other problems as well. Um, in terms of like reorganize some plans to make the future less chaotic. This is like with Flux stuff. Um, and work is starting to thing, but I don't know. I guess I don't feel good about taking breaks in things like this. I sort of
Yeah,
enjoy
I
doing it, but yeah, it feels negligent.
I think Christianity did a good job there, where they encourage and legitimize taking 1 day a week off. I think that works pretty well for people if they can do that with no guilt.
Mm.
I think if you're trying to take less than 1 day a week off, you should see that as like a very aggressive work schedule, not something you expect to maintain in general.
I haven't been keeping track of what I've actually done each day, so I don't know how much time I'm taking off. So that's yeah, just occurred to me. But yeah. Anyway, um, besides that, I wrote a little bit. I tried sitting down and writing, like, because we talked about goals, bigger goals. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess basically there's not really that much to it. There's like some stuff after 10 years, but I don't know what to really do there. Um, but in terms of like big picture stuff,
Yeah, so money, do you mean soon? Like, do you want to make a bunch of money in the short
uh,
term so you don't need to make it later, or do you just mean spread out over time, like make it as you need it is okay too?
uh, sooner is maybe better, but as I need it is sort of fine. There is a goal of like so by the time sort of I don't know in the 10 years sort of thing, this is like a maybe, but I figure I
Hmm.
should include it. Sorry. Basically it's to like support those sort of lifestyle freedoms. So I did some back of the envelope maths some years ago and figured that like $5 million would basically be a very decent life indefinitely. So that's roughly the goal.
I'm pretty skeptical of that. I think that's low. Um, there's both broad reasons and also like, for example, COVID and massive US dollar inflation. And I think it's having significant effects on the economy worldwide. And so those kind of events screw with it, and governments are happy to destroy savings wealth.
Mm. This is, I mean, one thing that sort of occurs to me is it's like you can be fine, like something like $5 million equivalent can be fine for like 40 years, and then if it gets to the point where it like dips significantly for whatever reason, um, then you can't maintain a lifestyle without like eating into it. Whether that lifestyle is good or bad is sort of not the point. It's just that
Oh, I
you're
think the eating into it thing is a misconception as well, because people look at the number of dollars rather than the inflation adjusted amount. So to avoid eating into it for real, it has to be growing continuously
oh,
in line with inflation.
yeah. So this was 5 million was I think I was working on $250,000 a year in terms of passive income. I'm not sure if I factored tax into that, but I mean that's pretty constant in this scheme of things. Um, I don't know what the but the point. I mean, the one of the points of this is to have excess in any case.
Yeah, so
Um,
you're assuming a 5% return above inflation. I think that's extremely high and very hard to get anything like that without significant risk.
and well, significant risk is not a good long-term plan.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked at this stuff before. I think people say things like that. I just don't think it's realistic or works. Even ignoring the system, like the larger risks, like a financial crash. Like,
So
so 5% after inflation, you might need like a return of 8% or something. And interest rates are currently under 1%.
Hmm. So something
So,
like
and if you're
this feels sustainable. Sorry, yep, go on.
if you're looking at stocks, um, index funds might be a systematic risk because so many people have put so much money into them. It's hard to tell. But there are theories that the stocks in the indexes are overpriced because the indexes are pouring money at them. And so investing is just hard. And there's no safe way to make lots of money easily passively.
Yeah. Um,
Like, I think
I
it's
don't.
okay to use index funds some, and like it helps with retirement savings and whatever, and there isn't an obvious better option. But if you're trying to get like $10 million and invest it in a really reliable way, it's a bigger danger, more money involved, and
Yeah. I mean, part of this is I don't really have a particularly responsible plan for getting there at the moment. Um, the the plan is more like do a startup rather than like save and invest responsibly. Um,
right.
which is not necessarily the best way, but it does
Startups
have.
are high variance. So
Mm,
depending on what your goals are, like, because this kind of goal, get $10 million, have passive income, do things. Um, it has a flavor of looking for low variance. Like you're not looking for the possibility of getting $100 million. Um, you just want like a pretty good outcome continuously. Like it seems a bit conservative, but then the startup plan to get there is very aggressive, high variance. Startups could make you $100 million. They could make you $0. There's a huge range of outcomes, so they're not well designed for get to 10 million and stop.
yeah, I guess the part of the like I don't intend to like stop there as such if I ever get there. Um, like the idea of this is just that this is the minimum that one should put away, uh, like in order to essentially have long-term security. Um, the intent is to end up with more, which feels a bit silly saying like that. But yeah.
There's analysis, by the way, of safe withdrawal rates based on historical data. And the ones I've seen, first of all, I think they use lower numbers, but second of all, they use using up all the money, not trying to preserve the original capital. Like
Oh
you
yeah, as
withdraw
in
5% of your money every
like
year,
you
that kind
plan
of
to
thing.
die at 100 years
Yeah.
old, and then yeah.
The
Um,
indefinite thing takes way, way more money to actually work.
okay, I haven't compared them. But that makes some sense. Um, I'm not sure that it's worth going for a retirement plan sort of figure in that uh, I'd really like the rest of the stuff that I do with my life to hopefully end up continuing for a lot longer than, you know, 80 years or whatever, or
Yeah, so
40
there's
more.
other issues there, like if you're doing productive things, won't those bring in money? If they're not bringing in money, there's something a little unusual there, if not actually bad.
Yes, no. I think they will. So, well, one of the exceptions is like Flux is difficult to like monetize on its own. That's what Secure Vote was for, was to like do the tech and sell that or something. Which is still technically around. It's just not being worked on. Um, I have other plans as well, but the stuff that um, it's one of those things where I have like potentially ideas of what to like do after this point. But it's stuff like looking into uh like I guess the intersection between artificial wombs and sort of hierarchical sort of I don't know pseudo fractal like uh structures that kids can educate like each other in, so that you could start a like I don't know, like a seed group that can essentially like expand exponentially much faster than like normal parent teacher, or sorry, not parent teacher, parent child relationships can. With the eventual goal being that we should like have lots more people faster than we could naturally breed them. So like something like that is one of the things that I'd like spend money on after the fact, and that could definitely
Yeah.
earn money. But it's also like a way out there ridiculous idea that I'm not going to bother, looking into in the next 10 years.
Yeah, that one's
Um,
a bit strange because like most people think they're worried about overpopulation and stuff. Like they don't want more people. They don't see the benefit.
yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of a bit silly.
Yeah, but it's like that's the world situation.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know why that would necessarily like stop me. Um, but I can see why people, would
Well,
have
it's the kind
objections
of
or
thing
something.
governments would literally stop by force.
Um, well, I mean, it's one of the reasons Flux and IVDD are like a thing that sort of going on first. Um, and
Yeah,
then
but
like
they're
I really
probably not going to change that.
um maybe I don't know. I think that it's more likely. Well, likely. I don't know. I think there are benefits that are substantial, both economically and policy-wise. I mean, well, they're intertwined, but I think there's a lot of potential there still. That's actually just thinking about something that I mean, we talked last week about, or last session about, whenever, about debating stuff. We never, or I never finished or continued the conversation from back in like 2017 about Flux and IBDD. It's one of the
Yeah,
things
so
I
the other
really
thing
really
about
like.
money is it sounds like part of what you want it for is to do uh like research or career transition or that kind of thing that doesn't
Yeah.
have any sort of immediate gains. And the amount you need to do that is significantly smaller. Like, you might need money to fund you for 5 years to go in a different direction.
Hmm. I guess I don't know. I don't really know what I end up doing besides that um I don't want to keep doing the same thing, and I don't want to feel stuck. I don't think I will feel stuck, but I might keep doing the same thing.
In general, I think it's good to try to make money off doing things you want to do anyways and make
Hmm.
that sustainable rather
Yep.
than get a bunch of money doing not what you want, planning to do what you want later.
Yeah. I've just realized that I don't have tutorial notes.
And my broad view on that is there are a lot of interesting things to do, and a small fraction of them, of all the potential ones, are relatively easy to monetize. But the monetizable ones is still quite a wide variety of things. So I think it shouldn't be that hard for someone to find something that other people are willing to pay for, that they like, spend some of their time on.
Yeah. I don't think I will have much time like finding useful things to do that people would pay for. Um, the question is, what would I want to do? But I don't know if it's worth considering that sort of thing when it's too far out because there's too much between now and then. Um,
Yeah. Regarding the parenting stuff, recruiting anyone to philosophy stuff is very, very hard. Um, Getting the right gender and age and life situation and so on like narrows it down a lot, and country. Like,
um, yeah, part of the idea of like money flux, other things, is that, I mean, in short, like, uh, become somewhat famous, um, you get free advertising, uh, make it public and have high standards, sort of thing. So that expands the market quite a bit as such. I don't
I
know how
don't think
practical that'll be.
I don't think that that actually would help much. So I've had over the years quite a lot of people come and take an interest in my stuff. Yeah, I don't think the problem there is I wasn't famous enough to get a larger number of people to come by.
Mm.
I don't think that's the bottleneck. Similarly, David Deutsch is considerably more famous than me, but that has not helped him attract very many good people.
Have you ever done like a back of the envelope on how many like good people there are?
Oh, I mean, it really depends on how you define good people. So,
Yeah.
because there's like field specific stuff. Like you can find programmers
Mm.
who are pretty good at programming, but recruiting them to be philosophers is something quite different and difficult. And then if you want to recruit people to be philosophers, like there's a lot of, I don't know, 16-year-olds where it seems sort of possible, but access is tricky and there's various problems, but they're not like so set in their irrational ways that it seems so impossible like it does with a lot of other people. But finding people who like already know a bunch of philosophy and are good at it and will learn new things and so on is, I mean, the number of available people in the world is somewhere in the ballpark of zero.
Yeah.
One of the ways you can look at it is you take the intersection of groups. So you can say like how many Popperians are into Rand or vice versa. And you can find that those intersections are extremely tiny. Like near zero. You can find like a couple of people sometimes. Like I've met a few Popperians who liked Rand. I didn't think they were actually good at either one, but you know, they met both criteria to a reasonable extent.
I guess one of the
But if you
things that I've
if you look
oh,
for
sorry,
that
go on.
kind of overlap plus like blog posts with good articles, say, then you get a lot closer to zero.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I was sort of, I don't know, this idea of gaps is, I feel like I've let the idea of gaps fill gaps in the plan. That is that you don't need to find a Papyrian who also likes Rand. You just need to find people who don't like, or don't dislike them, sort of thing. Um, like in the same way
Yeah,
that I, yeah, didn't like particularly have an opinion on Rand. Um, that's like still got potential in that case. I don't know if that really makes it the set bigger. But that's another. I mean, I sort of like you know had like 5 years between the two of the like finding the
yes,
partner and actually having a child. But yeah, sorry, go.
you can look for people with potential, um, who don't
It's
already know
dangerous
the
though.
stuff, but you could try to teach them or get them to read about it or whatever. And like that's fine, and there's a decent number of people, but the rate of them taking enough initiative to like pursue learning it on their own, like for their own reasons with their own motor, instead of you trying to drag them along, is hard to find many people who will actually do that very much, very actively pursue things that are outside of the social norm. Like people will get a PhD um or a job or something, right? Those are like normal goals in society. Getting someone to like read 20 books and study them and so on, just on their own outside of school, is most people won't do that kind of thing. And of the ones who will, most of them end up disagreeing in some sort of major way, like being an inductivist or being left wing or whatever. And most people at some point you run into some sort of strong attachment to the social status hierarchy and some sort of boundaries and dishonesty supporting the boundaries and hiding and obscuring the boundaries. But pretty much everyone is not really on a beginning of infinity path. Like, there's a lot of people who will learn some stuff within bounds. Like, they'll read a few books and be like, this is cool, and maybe they'll learn more about it to some extent. But getting on the, like, infinite rapid progress train is fairly different.
What I'm thinking is so one of the things that occurs to me is that if the world is insufficient for me to be able to pursue these things, and I mean, in general, it's insufficient for this sort of stuff, then one of the like particularly purposeful things that one can do is work on trying to solve those problems. I don't know, that seems like a default alternative.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I've been working on those problems for almost 20 years.
yeah.
These things aren't hopeless. It's just that you can't plan around success on them, is I think the point. You know? Like, it might work, but it's not a reliable thing that you can just be like, I'm gonna go do this, it'll take this time frame, etc.
Yeah, no, it's not. Well, I mean, it's like fixing education is like a pretty big pioneering effort. There's a lot of things that are wrong with it.
Yeah. But I meant
I
also
agree.
a TCS compatible parenting partner.
Mm.
It's not hopeless, but it's not a reliable thing. You can't just allocate a project to it and assume that it will succeed.
One of the other reasons to have a significant amount of money is single parenting becomes more of an option. It's not ideal, but it's potentially doable.
Yeah,
I think you'd need to like, as in, it's essentially full time though. You can't like really do much else. But I don't know if like raising a child would be worth it if there's lots of other things that aren't working.
the world situation. You can look at it as really grim, like people are really dumb and blah blah blah. But you can also look at it as like there's lots of opportunities for things to be better. Um, like the bar to make a big difference is in some ways low. Like there are low hanging fruit that are, I mean, they're low in some aspects and not others. Because like there's social suppression that makes them hard to access, but it doesn't take like 20 years of scholarly research and 5 eureka moments to come up with some important improvements and good ideas that would matter. Like the bar's a lot lower in that sense.
That is one thing that I thought about before sitting down to write this short list. And I didn't include it because well, I don't know, it didn't quite sound right, or I didn't know how to put it. But there is uh like I intend for my life to be significant, I guess. I don't know how to put it. Like that to make major improvements like you're describing, I guess. Is what I mean. I don't think I would be happy with it if I didn't, or I didn't at least try.
Yeah, that partially clashes with objectivism, FYI. The trying is fine, but objectivism as attitude is something like doing my work my way that I value. And it may help the world. You know, it's perfectly compatible and that's possible and you can put some effort into it, but it's not your job to save the world. A lot of people like talk about changing the world or saving the world or something. It's a fairly common goal, and it's not individualist enough, and the goal's success is too reliant on other people's choices and opinions and so on, which is it's important not to get drawn in too much into wanting to control what people do or think, even if it's for the sake of them being better or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much. Well, so I think I know what you're describing, and I think I used to do it a lot more than I do now, if I still do. Um, the like, because I've thought about. I don't actually know when I started sort of describing this, but um, like I have said for some time, like doing flux is a selfish thing for me, in that I don't think I would be happy with myself if I didn't attempt it. It's not because of what it will do for everyone. I mean, if it is like to do with some benefit, then it's far more to do with like the benefit for people who aren't alive yet than people who are alive now. I don't know. It's hard to. Maybe I'm just like, I don't know, not sort of or maybe I'm fooling myself in some way, but I don't. It's not like altruistic. Um, I don't really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Related, that's what the title of Atlas Shrugged is about. Um, Atlas is, in mythology, the guy holding up the world, and the book says he does not have to do that.
Yeah. I should read Atlas Shrugged. I was going to ask what. So, like objectivism, I feel like it's easier to apply it to an architect than, I don't know, a politician. I don't even know if you can have like an objectivist politician. But
That one's
what does,
difficult, especially
yeah,
today.
um, what does like doing like your best work mean for caring about certain things? It makes a lot of sense with stuff like architecture, um, or coding
Well,
maybe,
caring
or
about what? Like what kind of example? Um, well, maybe this will help. So Rand said it's too early for a political party for objectivism. People should not try to get involved in politics. The thing that's needed is philosophical education. And when the public understands things much better, then you could make a political party and be a lot easier at that point. But a political party is the wrong vehicle or mechanism to educate people on capitalism and objectivism and so on. And political parties and elections and so on are not designed for teaching people things very well.
no, I agree. Or
And
yes, I agree.
yeah. So the closest thing to a politician that makes a lot of sense today that's easy to think of is someone like a political philosopher who explains those issues and teaches people.
Yeah. I don't necessarily agree with this in the sense that you don't have to go like there can be indirection before objectivism. So it might be the right time for some political party. Like Flux is an objectivist. It's not really anything yet, I guess. I don't know what it is. There's more like Beginning of Infinity David Deutsch in there than anything else, I guess.
Yeah, I'm pretty doubtful that trying to act and reach out and affect the world significantly at this point makes much sense without a lot more planning and yeah. But I do think that that voting systems are a reasonable research area. Like instead of political philosopher, it can be mathematician or whatever. And looking into those things, it's a perfectly good research area.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think most of the people working on that stuff are barking up the wrong tree. I mean, there's not really many people working on it. There's like, Richard NGO, I think. Anyway, yeah, melting democracy. There's occasionally people mention liquid democracy. No one's really doing anything though to actually try
Right.
and
Usually
further it.
with that kind of stuff, the intellectual stuff should be worked out a lot more before trying to get the masses involved in more of like a grassroots way. Because yeah, when the intellectual stuff is unstable, then spreading it is a lot more problematic because you keep changing it on them.
Yeah.
And you get stuck with whatever you've set up too much.
So I haven't spent the time to write down like a lot of the stuff in great detail. I mean, partially because I don't think it's very interesting. Like a lot of the details are pretty mechanical and boring. But I think there are other ways that it can be used as well. And in terms of Flux and IBDD. Anyway, and that can give a competitive advantage in certain places. Anyway, yeah.
If you want to interface with existing institutions and get a competitive advantage, like you have enough of an intellectual idea that it gives you some sort of edge in some standard competition, that's fairly achievable, but the consequences are generally relatively limited because you're just taking a normal thing and giving it a boost. Whereas if you want to do something like really unconventional and different and wild, then like education needs to come first, and trying to make it happen early before it's relatively easy, is a huge amount of work that doesn't develop the ideas further and isn't optimized for education. It's related to the overreaching and the powering up stuff. My ideas about focusing on becoming more powerful, understanding things better, and then doing like the practical things primarily after you've made so much intellectual progress that they're relatively easy. You get them for cheap resource usage. If you can make rapid progress, like say 25% per year, so you get a fairly good doubling time, then
It's like
if you just focus on progress, you end up orders of magnitude ahead, and then when you're orders of magnitude ahead, you can do something from a couple orders of magnitude ago, and it's like really easy now. And if you follow that general pattern, then in the long run, you can potentially do way more stuff, while the doing part is very cheap and easy.
So a few things that come to mind. I think the last time I updated these goals was 2018, roughly speaking. The TCS thing I've added, but this was roughly there, but it's got more texture lately. Another thing is, like, I'm particularly interested in like breakpoints and breakthroughs in terms of doing stuff. Like, I'm not interested in a modest competitive advantage. I feel like I'd be wasting my time, in essence.
Yeah, so that
Uh,
kind of thing, it takes not only the intellectual breakthrough, but also um, the plan for how to apply it and what changes to make and where the leverage points are and how to use them needs to be really, really high quality as well. Like, just being right isn't enough. You have to model the world and figure out what all the cause and effect relationships in the world are that are relevant. And then what points can you poke to cause big effects? And what will the effects be? And then what will the negatives be? And then what additional actions can you take to address those negatives? And so on. Goldratt talks about this stuff in context of changing a business and things like the current reality tree and the future reality tree. And what to change, how to cause the change. That stuff. What to change to, and how to cause the change is one of his like sets of steps you can go through.
yeah. So I think I have something with both of these, but I mean, well, I'll find out in the next few months.
It's the kind of thing that's really hard and should be exposed to criticism in general.
Yeah. It is and has been. Not enough because it's not public, but well, it's sort of public, but not really. I think Flux was one of these. I mean, maybe still in terms of leverage points. But I mean, one of the things that's very different about Australia from basically everywhere else in the world was that we had a weird, well, we still do in a few states, but a weird thing called group voting tickets that allow political parties to control preferences. So it's like a preferential system, but people typically just vote one above the line, and then parties negotiate with each other to decide where the preference flows go, which is really, really unique. And I think it's actually a good shift in terms of power because it shifts away from uh, away from more apathetic people towards people who actually care more about doing something. The counterpoint there is that there's a lot of cynicism, and it's a reasonably good job if you can just luck into it. You don't really have to do much, and it's like 200K a year for 3 years or 4 years.
Oh, I see.
In
I
terms
was
of
going to say
getting
also
elected.
that political activists and people who want to pursue politics, like put a lot of work into it, like should not be the ruling class. The people with a day job who, you know, aren't that into politics, the regular people, I think should have a lot of influence, even though they're not experts.
Yes. I agree. I think that it's unwise to just go straight to like direct democracy, like carte blanche everywhere, though. That doesn't make much sense either. But I think there are good mixes. I mean, that's why like IBDD is about like self-organization, and like using a market force to create opportunity cost between issues. So even people who don't know much or whatever else, um, they still have an incentive to stay out of things they don't understand and focus on things that they at least know will affect them. Um, I think it's like significantly better. Like there are really big improvements that we could make in terms of democracy. Um, the point of the
Yeah,
Australia thing is just that you can get elected with like 0.5% of the popular vote sometimes. Usually it's not that low, but there have been cases of something like that when the quota is like 14%.
There are really big improvements that could be made to a lot of things, but there are forces at work in society that makes it harder than people think it is, that get in the way and suppress change and make it hard to have much control over things. One of the forces is the so-called ruling elites.
So this is something that I mean, in general, I've sort of like thought about for a bit, and I'm somewhat conflicted on the idea in general, in that I don't like. Is there a limit to the quality of an idea that, like, an idea that's just so high quality it can't be like snuffed out, sort of thing?
I basically don't think it works that way because most people aren't truth-seeking. They're not looking for idea quality. I mean, maybe if you're like from a million years in the future, you can develop something or whatever, but I think realistically, being right like a lot does not mean it's going to work and that people will listen.
Do you think there's a leverage point to tackle this sort of thing?
There are things you can do, but plans are tricky. Like one of the ways is you social climb and you join the ruling elite. It helps a lot if you go to Princeton or something. This is a difficult plan. One of the main problems with the plan is people often get subverted along the way. They become they get corrupted. They become part of the ruling elite and just become normal instead of maintaining their ideals the whole way along while joining it.
So I mean, I can't remember where I heard this. It might have been Justin in the last few months. But like one of the common ideas in politics is like, oh, if you think democracy is so bad, then like join a political party and like run and get elected and then change it from the inside. And wherever I heard this, the comparison was made of like, oh, you think the mafia is really bad and they do terrible crimes, so you should join them and change them from the inside. Anyway, yeah, I mean, there's a reason Flux is like separate and unaffiliated and doing weird stuff that other political parties don't do. And similarly, I don't think that something like social climbing is ever going to, like, I don't care about that enough anymore, I think, anyway, but I
Oh,
like, yeah, being subverted or whatever else is a major risk, and it's not worth trying to pursue this sort of thing in that direction.
yeah, I was not advocating that plan. I think
Oh
it's
yeah, no, sorry, I
generally a
didn't mean
bad
to.
idea.
Yeah, I didn't mean to
Okay.
imply that you were.
Yeah, okay. Um,
Um,
yeah, so there are other plans. Before we continue, I wanted to say, do you think this stuff is important? Because my initial plan was to try to do some sort of debate thing, but this broad stuff seems fairly important to me, but it's up to you.
it is important. I don't know whether it's urgent or whether it's the best use of time. But I think it's important. I mean, I guess one of the things, I don't think any of our conversations about this are going to change my decision on what I do tomorrow as
Hmm.
such. Um, so it is very important, and I don't want to stop talking and thinking about this sort of stuff, but I don't know whether, now is the right time to talk about it, essentially. So I'm happy to do some debate stuff. I mean, I guess today I'm a bit tired and I've been like a bit lax with doing stuff and writing and things. Um, I don't know whether that means that it's better to focus on stuff like this or better to focus on like change of pace stuff and do something that's a bit more solid.
Okay, let's try continuing this a bit, but let me know if you want to switch.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So first plan was social climbing.
Oops.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So another plan is new money, e.g., Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley
Yeah.
has been sort of accepted into the halls of power in a big way, but as part of that, they've gone quite lefty and sort of they've copied the status quo a lot more than changed it, broadly speaking.
Do you think that the like in general, so maybe there are exceptions like well, I don't know if you count Bezos as an exception, but like Steve Jobs as an exception sort of thing. But there's a whole I get the feeling that there's just a whole bunch of ordinary people who have gotten incredibly rich through Silicon Valley. Like I don't think most of them are particularly good at anything in particular. Maybe perseverance. Like I don't know if
Yeah,
that's just
I mean a lot of them are decent programmers, but yeah, it's a bit of a gold rush.
um so yeah, I don't really I used to look up to that stuff or whatever a lot more. Not like 4 years ago used to, but like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Um, I don't think that's I don't hear much that seems good to like try and do that. So the new money part is better than the Silicon Valley part in that. But I also don't think you need like I mean they've been welcomed into um I don't know the old courts sort of thing, full of all the old money. But I don't know if that's really good. Like they haven't really done anything. There's a few counterexamples, small counterexamples, but nothing. I don't have any really big stuff.
Yeah. For example, Silicon Valley has broadly failed to influence COVID policy. Like, because the techies, a lot of them had better ideas about COVID fairly early on, but they just didn't get listened to.
I have a feeling about um, there's like a frustration with actually there's a frustration with a lot of anyone who I perceive to be like either intelligent or like caring about politics or like when I say politics I don't mean the um, what faux pas happened on the weekend politics like proper country level decision making stuff, world level decision making stuff. Um, I have a lot of disappointment in people's unwillingness to look for alternate solutions, I guess. In that it feels like the answer has just been which candidate do I like more? Go with that. And I think that that's ultimately harmful because any time spent not improving like the system is entrenching errors.
I think if you want
At-
progress, you basically don't do it through politics. Politics isn't set up for it well. Elections are about current policy over the next few years. They have some ability to sort out disagreements, so on regarding that. But if you want a better world, um, you have to educate either large numbers of people or powerful people. Take your pick, and then you'll start getting better candidates in the elections and with better policy positions and so on. Yeah, you can do some of both. It can be a mix. There are medium people as well.
Thinking particularly if there are so I don't quite know how to describe it, but like the like metaphorical equivalent of like a double entendre, except instead of double meaning, it like does both sides of this. Like, is there something that you can do that has like a like one thing that has synergy for both of these groups, without trying to separate? Like, I feel like one of the reasons that people don't do particularly well with this stuff is because they focus on one group and they make compromises to essentially pander to that group, which ruins the education part.
I mean, if you just write straight up educational material, it can appeal to anyone.
Yeah, most people don't want to do education stuff though.
Yeah. But some people do, and then they can tell their friends and it can gradually spread. That's one of the things that can happen. Sometimes educational things could potentially go like somewhat viral, or I mean Atlas Shrugged sold millions of copies. And like a lot of powerful people read it in addition to millions of regular people.
You think many of them understood it though? Or like understood nearly as much as they could have? Was it
No, but it moved the needle. Like it made some difference. Even if they only understand 5% of it, it still makes a difference. It makes some change to public policy and so on. And it could have been a much larger change if, for example, ARI was good and Rand had gotten 20 disciples who were actually really good. And then it could have spread a lot more, and maybe each of them could have gotten some disciples and written more books and so on. It could have been the start of a bigger thing, but it didn't snowball particularly well because she couldn't find anyone else who was really great, and so it was just sort of her against the world.
I need to go to the bathroom and take care of my cat. I'm just going to type this note and then do that and grab some more Coke. All right, I'll be back in a sec. Okay, back.
Okay, so you're wondering about Rand? She
So
attracted followers, but it turns out that none of them were all that good. The best one was George Reisman, but he's an economist rather than primarily a philosopher. He wrote a treatise on economics, which is very good, but he's more of a student of Mises than Rand. and
Um,
he got kicked out of ARI by the other people.
oh, that's not right. I can't spell his name. So one of the things that I just thought about in what do you call it? Just then was that something that I haven't thought about for well, in the past like 3 months since doing all this, or 4 months, whatever it's been. I started the process of like doing prep work to get like to fix my teeth, essentially, is the idea, because there's like a little not aligned bit. Anyway, I'm curious on like an objectivist sort of reckoning on whether that's good or not. I just thought I'd mention while I've got it in my head.
Is it a purely cosmetic issue?
Uh, Getting the wisdom teeth out probably was good in general, but otherwise, yeah, I don't think. I mean, it will technically make cleaning them easier, but otherwise, uh, pretty much.
Okay.
The main. Yep. Sorry, go on.
First of all, a lot of dental stuff is really sketchy, and the science is crap, and there's just things that everyone knows that are maybe not true. And I think the wisdom teeth pulling might be on that list, although I'm not positive offhand.
I think there was one wisdom tooth that was going in like sideways. It hadn't been an issue so far, but might cause issues in the future. Anyway, but to what do you call it? Get like Invisalign or braces or whatever. Um, they needed to get taken out. So that was sort of the thing. They hadn't caused me any issues for years since they like come through as much as they did.
Yeah, I think like even the research on toothbrushing and fluoride and stuff is not very good from my recollection. The whole industry is like pretty questionable in various ways.
Yeah. I don't know that much. In terms of cosmetic teeth alignment, though, I mean that at least you know is pretty well observable to work. The idea, or that where it sort of started with, is A, that it's a one-off, and B, if
What do you
uh,
mean by one off? Because a lot of times you have to keep wearing retainers at night to
um,
maintain it.
yes. So I don't know. Well, that's one of the things I need to start doing that anyway because I grind my teeth and they're at risk of cracking apparently.
Oh,
Um,
okay, yeah.
so that's sort of yeah. Um, anyway, just the idea of like being in politics or whatever else. So I guess so if people judge you for something that is not particularly important or significant or something, cost aside, I don't think that's particularly significant in the scheme of things, um, like in terms of factoring in. But if someone's going to like if people are going to judge you for something that you can control, uh, and it doesn't have like a big impact on your life, is it pandering to like change that to avoid people judging you on that thing? Um,
Yeah, it is somewhat. It might not be that big a deal, but like, do you want to get along with people who are shallow and stupid like that? Who make a big deal out of it? Do you make a big deal out of it? Like, there's questions there. Like, how picky do you want to be about who you interact with? If you want to filter out that kind of person, then that would be a reason to not change it because it will help you with the filtering. But if you want to get along with that type of person and you think it doesn't matter that much, then that would be a reason to change it, since the cost on your end is manageable. And it's not like intellectual corruption or something.
I guess I don't want I don't want to be in a position where where it matters and be on the wrong side of that, I guess. So there's no one that I like can think of that it would matter for. Like in terms of someone that I interact with who's going to be a lot happier or whatever. Um Yeah.
Like personally, I don't face cam, even though I think that that the body language and stuff does contain useful information. Like I think there's positive value there. But I don't do
Mm.
it anyways because of the negatives. Like people are very judgy and distracted, and I don't want to interact with that crowd.
So the body language is the primary reason that I do it, by the way, is that so that you can tell like if I'm paying attention or like looking out the window or whatever else, or other people as well. But I guess I don't know. Like I'm in a weird position being very public already anyway. Um, I guess that's part of the
Right.
thing about the braces is just that that's not going to go away. And I don't realistically see how it could go away in terms of future possibilities, unless I like drop everything.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal. I don't think you should be super worried about it one way or the other. And I don't think it's like a huge priority to try to optimize. Um,
Yep.
you know, you might find that in 5 years you're the kind of person who would not have gotten the braces, but it won't be like a huge regret.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't rush it on the theory that maybe you'll be a different person in the future. So, if you want them, I don't like strongly object.
Yeah. No. Cool. Started the sort of process. Actually, it was like a year ago when I had my wisdom teeth out. Um, then some stuff was going to happen in March, but COVID. So anyway, the my dentist is like doing a training course, so it's like synergistic to tee that up with her because it's cheaper. So I'm just going to do it whenever it comes around. But no, that's fair enough. It's good. There's no serious issues. The other thing thinking about Rand then is so I've like a few
Oh,
times in. Oh,
you
sorry.
should
Yep.
also look into the technology before you get it. Um, some of those technologies are not as good as they're advertised to be. A good example is LASIK, which I think is too dangerous to get, which
Yep.
is a little bit similar.
Well, I mean, lasers going into your eyeballs compared to I don't
Yeah,
know.
but so I know that with the Invisalign type stuff, some people have issues with it causing loose teeth, and I think it's partly related to how quickly they do it, and sometimes they rush too much to move your teeth. And I have not looked into this a lot, and it might depend on the brand and the specific one and various things, but you should look into it.
Yeah. No, that's reasonable. I'm not sure what do you call it. I mean, Invisalign criticism. You've got top 3 reasons, orthodontist, blah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's pretty crap criticism. It doesn't work maybe, but yeah, the others are. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there
No,
are
I
some
will do.
like academic papers with like actual outcomes for like groups of patients or whatever. It's similar, by the way, if you're going to take any sort of medication, pretty much. It's worth looking up and seeing what you're getting into because the information given to people by doctors is often quite bad, and it often
Yeah.
like dramatically downplays symptoms in ways that I think are fraudulent, in my opinion.
So yeah, no, I agree. In terms of particularly, uh, yeah, stuff that gets diagnosed for anything related to, yeah, mental health sort of stuff. I don't know what to
Oh yeah, that
call it.
stuff's awful. But I had in
Um,
mind regular stuff. A lot of those drugs have
mm.
major and drugs and surgeries and so on have major side effects that are downplayed.
So part of the thing that I was thinking about, sorry, in terms of the crossover there, was like, so I've like had a friend, uh, like essentially need medical attention for alcoholism type thing, and multiple like prescriptions were prescriptions, whatever it is, um, yeah, were there. Some for psychological stuff and some for physical stuff. But anyway, that was just why I started thinking about it. Um, but I agree in general. I don't think I would be happy. Well, I mean, I'm not going to be taking anything, so I guess it doesn't matter. But no, I think something long term. I have heard stories about like people taking like something for like 10 years without needing it because some doctor was bad once, and they just kept
Yeah, that
refilling the
kind of
script.
stuff happens too.
Um,
Diagnoses can be pretty bad sometimes. It
yeah,
varies.
that's one of the things that I think is actually quite bad about the attitude of like people shouldn't look up stuff on WebMD or whatever else.
Most people are really bad at looking it up, like worse than their doctor significantly.
I guess that's
So I think that's part of why doctors get annoyed about it. But then there's also a lot of doctors are not very good at debate and explanation, and so a confident person looks things up, and the doctor ends up annoyed because they don't just take his word for it.
yeah, yeah.
But like, there's stories about Feynman looking up medical info because his first wife had tuberculosis, and he did a good job with that. But he's super smart.
Yeah, that is one thing I have thought about. If I was ever told that I'd contracted like a terminal illness, then I think I'd, yeah, quit my job and start researching it immediately. Maybe not quit my job immediately, but if it turns out to be real, then yes. But I don't know why anyone wouldn't. But then again, I guess people aren't generally good at thinking, so that sort of makes sense. I don't know.
They can hire me to look into their disease.
That's
So Ayn Rand stuff.
oh yeah. So sorry. The so conflict that I have between uh helping the masses or helping the best people type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Rand wrote books that were read by lots of people, which seems like helping the masses. Uh,
Yeah, so I
she,
think the important thing is
Mhm.
that it's designed so it can help the best people. Like you make sure that works. And then if you do that, it often can help a lot of other people too. You know, it doesn't necessarily exclude them. But you don't want to do things like dumb it down so that it can't help the best people in order to reach the masses better. And like so Rand did fine there. Like she wrote books that could benefit me. You know, there's no one who's like too good for her books.
I don't know about the wording, but yeah, okay. So that makes more sense. There is then like this thing though of she wasn't able to figure out how to solve the problem of getting good followers while she was alive. Um, maybe there were some, but in general, it doesn't seem like it. Uh,
Yeah, so it depends what you count exactly. Like she did okay at like having friends, having customers, having people who'd attend her lectures, or you know, she could get feedback from people and advice and editing and whatever. Like you know, she had a social network. That's all fine, but you know, if you wanted like really great people who are going to keep the movement going, in a similar way to her, then she didn't find people who were that good. Um, Peikoff seemed sort of like a maybe, and he did write some good stuff. He did some good work. Opar was worth writing, uh, and he did other stuff. But what happened with Peikoff, as far as I can tell, is he needed Rand to course correct him on a regular basis. And once she died, he started drifting, and over time it got worse and worse. So he never quite like had it in a self-sufficient way. But while he had Rand giving advice, he was able to do good work. And for like, you know, 10 years after her death, he was doing good work in it, but it went downhill.
that feels so. It feels like that type of person should be like more common than great people. Uh, sorry, yeah, more common than great people, but less common than, medium people and so on. Um, I feel like there's why is there such a why is it so inconsistent? Like good philosophers. This seems like a really big.
What do you mean inconsistent? What's inconsistent with what?
So inconsistent in terms of variance. Like they don't necessarily overlap with each other. Like there's 8 billion people on the planet type thing. Why don't we have more good thinkers? Are they just hidden now or young or because it seems like we had some in the past, like Rand and Popper like overlapped for most of their life, I think. Um,
Yeah, so Popper's notable because he was not that good a thinker overall in general. Like, he wasn't consistently a good thinker. He got a lot of things horribly wrong. He had some particularly important, notable ideas. But he's very different than Rand, who was Rand's range is like way above average to great, whereas Popper's range is like well below average to great.
yeah, okay. Like Popper had worse variance, sort of thing, or greater variance. Um, did Popper overreach too much in terms of the subject matter he was going for? Was Rand more conservative in that regard, or was Rand just better
No,
overall? So,
Rand tackled more stuff. She was broader,
okay, yeah.
more
Oh, okay,
ambitious.
interesting. Yeah,
Um, I don't think that was Popper's problem exactly. Like, I think he was just wrong about some stuff. Like, he knew Mises existed, and he didn't like it, and then he sort of opposed capitalism to some extent. And he never wanted to write a rebuttal to Mises. I don't know why, but he just literally decided to not write a rebuttal while holding contrary views.
yeah. No, it seems I guess odd, but I have a particularly modern understanding of Popper, I guess. Um, yeah. Also, the like, some of the stuff that I understand he thought seems weirdly contradictory to other stuff. Like censorship of various TV stuff. I think I've heard mentioned before.
Yeah.
Um, but then he's got like the paradox of tolerance thing, um, which seems to pretty squarely go against that. Um,
No, his politics was iffy the entire time. Like, Open Society talks about sort of social technology as like ways governments can influence society, and he thinks that governments can like improve their techniques so that their policies and regulations are more effective at causing the outcomes they want, and we can have progress in that domain, which is not like the worst idea ever, but it's fairly statist and authoritarian in overall outlook.
what do you think a reasonable amount to read is? Like, if I was serious about
Like hours per week or what?
uh I don't even know the units necessarily. I guess I'm thinking of like books in some ways, in that like to read an author, as in basically to have a good overview of pretty much everything they've written. Not necessarily understand it fantastically, but have a good overview and know where to look for more stuff. Um,
It
I guess
really
I'm
varies by author and what you're trying to understand from them. I don't think there's just a generic thing. With my experience is there aren't too many books from the best authors, so you can kind of just read them all.
yeah. I guess I should obviously probably start with this.
Right? Like, it
Um,
would take a while to go through all the books I list there, but that's not anywhere near a lifetime worth of books.
hmm,
Even if you add all the other books by the main authors, it's still, much less than a lifetime. And it's hard to find a bunch of other books of similar importance. Besides Goldratt, who I think might not be on that list. I was just at the bottom, like brief mention.
yeah.
Like the authors I think are really generically important are like ETDD, AR, KP, and Goldratt. Like not that many people. And DD has 2 books.
Yeah.
He's got, email archives and stuff as well, but yeah. So
It's
like
not much.
this is a pretty manageable list to be pretty thorough with.
Just like Mises or Reisman make the list?
No, I mean I think it's good to know something about economics, right? Like it's worth looking into the subject, but I don't think you need to like thoroughly read Mises or something unless you're actually going to be an economist. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
okay,
think
fair enough.
everyone needs to know all the stuff about that.
Hmm.
So yeah, he's significantly more specific. These are more generic.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yep. No, I can see that.
Feynman's pretty generic, and I think like more or less everyone should read Surely You're Joking, but it's not like a bunch of literature or something.
hmm.
Like a lot of
It's,
people should read Selfish Gene, but and if they don't understand evolution, maybe they should read more of his books, but it's not like a major project, I think.
um, I'm not sure I don't think I've read Selfish Gene, but I'm not sure what I'd get out of it. Like I think I understand the concept of a selfish gene and what that means.
Yeah, so Dee Dee's books cover it. Both books have like a chapter on it, so you probably already have the main ideas. You might understand it better if you read Dawkins, but it might not be like a particular priority or anything.
I'm not sure what new stuff I'd be able to do that I couldn't do. Like, what would that understanding get me essentially?
Right,
Um,
so if you go deeper into epistemology, then you might find that it would be useful to clarify evolution more. But it's probably not like currently needed for something you're doing.
no, yeah.
Yeah, so you're asking about variance and great people. And by the way, Goldratt sold millions of books, like 7 million or so. Had quite a lot of influence on business schools and stuff, but no followers who are anywhere near him. Like I've tried to read some of the books by other TOC people, and they're nothing like Goldratt. And that includes his own children. Like I watched a few minutes of Rami Goldratt, his son, giving a speech, and it was okay. And like I wouldn't entirely give up on him just from that, but it did not impress me.
This is just thinking about that on the side. I don't think like if I w I don't I mean I don't know what's reasonable to think about this actually. Um, so my impression is that it's not necessarily worth spending the effort to raise a child if like they can't be particularly good because there's better ways to contribute.
So I think having a child for the purpose of raising a great person is a bad idea. I don't think you should have like a strong goal for a child, and I think also that that outcome is unrealistic. I think you should expect major reversion to the mean. Um, like raising a child who's a ways above average, if you're really good, is pretty realistic. But I don't think like super outlier is something that you can count on or plan on at all. And I think history shows that with, Feynman's kids, Goldratt's kids, and various others.
One thing that gets me about that is that shouldn't ideas play more of a role in like those people's kids' success? It feels like so I mean, how do we differentiate the like between
I think it's because people's ideas are not thorough enough and advanced enough for how to deal with static memes and social dynamics and so on. And like if you look at Goldratt and Feynman, they didn't even know what the dangers were all that well. They didn't understand very well how bad schools were and what actions parents do that destroy children. Like TCS has a decent amount of specific ideas about like here are a bunch of common parenting behaviors that are actually hurting children and here's why and so on. And not many people have been great and also tried to raise a kid while knowing about that stuff. And I think that stuff is a bit like new, like you shouldn't expect it to work. It's experimental, exploratory.
Yeah. Well, it occurs to me that
For the goal, if you just go on Amazon, you
it's
can
not
see on the
working.
book cover it'll say like sold more than 6 million or something.
Okay, I thought it was like 25 million. That's why I was looking for it.
Oh, I
Um,
don't think so. That one says 6. There might have been a different version that said 7, but I don't think I've seen
yeah,
larger.
okay. No, fair enough. Um, I'm sort of surprised in some ways that it's so few. In that
That's really high for a book.
the thing that gets me is just like how many people are working in like project management or small business or manufacturing or large business or whatever. Like everyone has a reason to read this, and it's like $15.
Yeah, so
Like,
part of what's going on is a lot of people can't tell the difference. Like, so the goal people have bragged, um, about Bezos recommending the goal to managers. And like making some of his top execs read it. I don't know if this link's gonna work. I've seen it somewhere. But anyways, um, right. There's a working link somewhere, but so I saw that like the article, and he recommends the goal, and then he recommends 2 other like management books that are just sort of like normal ones. I think I'm pretty sure. So like he can't tell the difference. He liked it enough to recommend it to a lot of people, but he still can't tell that this one is great while this other one is okay. He just lumps them together. And so I think the vast majority of people, even who read it, don't know that it's greatness. They don't recognize it. By the way, when I first read the goal, I thought, well, this seems a bit obvious and all makes sense. And I didn't do much with it, and I came back to it after a couple of years. And I mean, I partly blame that on it's not my field, and I had no idea how bad things people were doing were. If I was actually working and needed to use the ideas and was exposed to rival ideas, then I would have been a lot more impressed about someone actually making sense, unlike the other people. But yeah, people. I think a lot of people, it sounds good, and then they find that when they try to go do it and be Jonah or whatever, that they don't get great results and they're not super effective and it's hard to do and the book didn't turn them into a hero and whatever. And occasionally like some people get pretty good results and it's made a big difference in some companies, but that's not a typical result. It's not like millions of readers are making big differences. It's more like, a few hundred or a few thousand people have made a big difference in their company with TOC. So for
yeah,
most people it doesn't work that well. They can't just like read the book and learn it and then do it because the processes in the book, the thinking and so on, require that you can think. Like it doesn't actually teach you how to think from 0 to hero. It teaches you how to
so,
think from way above average to um some of the information about how to take that further.
hmm.
You can actually see that in the follow-up material by a lot of his followers. A lot of it is about like really specific applications. It's people have fragile knowledge and they're bad at thinking, so let's apply this for them We'll just take a bunch of specific individual cases and try to write up, what do you do with TOC in this case? What do you do with TOC in this case? Like de-principalizing it, concretizing it. They're trying to do a lot of the applications. And even the people doing that, like the authors, are not that great with the principles. Fortunately, Goldratt did a lot of concrete cases while he was alive, so they have a lot to go by. And yeah, the general world situation is like static memes sort of get almost everyone to a large extent. And maybe they manage to carve out a niche where they do okay, like programming or something. But like sort of unbounded BOI type genius is just extraordinarily rare. There's a lot of mechanisms that crush it out of everyone. And you shouldn't be that confident about yourself, in my opinion. Like, you're not that established or clear accomplishments with philosophy. It's hard to know what you'll do or what'll happen.
Yeah, no, I do worry about that. I feel like it'd be pointless to like hedge too much. Also, I don't feel like it's worth particularly trying to revisit this like too frequently, I guess. These things are still like generally motivating. I think it's good to be motivated by things that will like pay dividends for civilization.
Yeah, so some of the areas that need work are organizing the things I've developed in the last 10 years, like beyond Deutsch, and as well as organizing them and developing them better, there's also teaching them better so more people can understand them. And
there's oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I've got some of the tools, maybe. I mean, I think I've gone further than anyone else for what's wrong with the world, why are people so broken, what's actually going on there, and understanding it and coming up with some solutions about what should be done or what would be rational or whatever.
It feels like there's I guess vicious cycles is maybe a cliche way of putting it. There's like self-supporting I don't know, networks of static memes is sort of half of it, except that it goes further. There's a lot of things that there's nowhere to start, sort of thing, with a lot of
I
this
think a
stuff.
lot
Like,
of the static meme stuff is social dynamics related, so
hmm,
that's potentially a place to start, but it's a hard one to engage with people about because they do things like make logic errors and be biased and not answer questions. And so if we could start with like discussion skills, that might make more sense before trying to discuss something really hard like static memes or social dynamics. But when I try to discuss discussion skills with people, they often get mad about social dynamics and quit or something, often because they're bad at it and they don't want to do a student role.
so one thing that I have thought about as like an out is so the sort of idea of like kids raising kids at the beginning, particularly if you can feed it with feed, that's the wrong word. If you can like exponentially produce more humans via artificial wombs, you don't need to necessarily worry about anyone currently alive transitioning into like better people. Um, if you can just
I think
outpace them and then raise kids right, then That could be an out, essentially.
Yeah, that's I mean that's not 100% impossible, but it's broadly very difficult or unlikely. Like there's major forces that will make that hard, which are, the status quo people will defend themselves and they will suppress that kind of threat. So one of the things you can do is try to make it so they don't see it coming, which I don't know how you would manage that, but it comes up with AGI because there's a lot of people who think AGI is a huge threat that's not adequately recognized. So if you're dealing with like new technologies that people don't understand, sometimes you can get your foot in the door when they don't realize there's a danger. I think people are very confused about AGI dangers, but nevertheless, like the ruling elites are not aware, or they don't have reasonable opinions about it and don't know what they're talking about. So if there was a danger, they wouldn't know what it was.
Yep. This is the only idea I think I have that's solid enough that might actually do something that people would not see it coming.
Yeah, there's other things like maybe if cryonics or life extension worked, that could be sort of society changing and people would change their attitudes. And one of the things that would happen is people would live a lot longer, which means you don't have to keep educating new people all the time. They can just keep building on their knowledge. So yeah, if people stop dying and losing all their knowledge, then they can make progress over time and things could just get better.
That makes some sense. I worry that it's too slow though. Like the advantage of the artificial womb thing is that like you
Yeah,
could
it is a
end
slow
up
one.
with like a trillion people in the next century sort of thing. That's like
Yeah.
reasonable. Like there's a lot of caveats and whatever else, but it's not outside the realm of possibility,
Yeah,
physics
the
wise at least.
the immortality one, that people die and lose all their knowledge was mentioned and complained about by William Godwin over 200 years ago, by the way.
Wow, that's I don't know when is it.
Yeah,
Was anyone else like thinking about that then or beforehand?
I'm not sure. But he actually also wrote a whole novel about, I think it's Saint Leon, about a guy who gets like a immortality drug or something. But in one of his philosophy books, he says something about it's such a tragedy that like education has to start over every generation, every like 25 years or whatever.
Yeah,
And he thought that science and knowledge and so on would lead to immortality one day.
that's pretty. I mean, considering the state of medicine at that point in time,
Yeah,
um, yeah, it's pretty far reaching in terms of vision.
yeah,
I get really sad about yeah, when people like this have died. It feels wrong. Most deaths don't feel wrong like that, but some people.
yeah. I know. Feynman
I
as
guess
well.
that's one of the reasons that like with this whole democracy stuff and flux and whatever else, and like part of the reason I say that it's selfish is because the stuff that's going to have the biggest impact for future humans is also the same stuff that'll like prevent me dying. Like there's no way to get like there's no shortcut to effective I don't know anti-senescence treatment. Um, yeah, we can't just like pour $100 million into it and just make that happen. Um, like particularly if people need to like have much better ways of thinking, then like in general, for that sort of thing to happen, which I wouldn't be surprised about in terms of like crossover between different fields of study and like we need some kind of breakthrough. So that seems reasonable enough. Uh, but yeah, we can't rely on time and resources doing it, and so we need. Sorry, excuse me. We need uh, moonshots, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, meanwhile, our civilization is under major attack currently. With like woke and cancel culture and a lot of anti-free speech and mob justice, and there's a lot of other things.
Yeah.
There's Green New Deal. California just announced they're gonna like ban new gas cars in 15 years. Meanwhile, their power grid doesn't work because they haven't managed to invest in infrastructure for decades.
It's a bit ridiculous that, like, what do you call it? Tesla built a massive battery out in South Australia in 3 months, and in their backyard, they have those sort of issues. The US is, I'm consistently, like this year, I've been consistently surprised by what's going on. I've just like tuned out now. I paid attention like March and April.
Yeah, this
Um,
stuff has been building for a long time.
it's
This is what Obama wanted. He was like a somewhat of a late result, not an early result.
yeah, it's terrifying, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and if they destroy the US, no other country's gonna make it either. With the current like Anglo civilization.
I don't know what would I don't know what would happen. But I also think the US is more resilient than it maybe appears.
Oh yeah, I
I
don't think
don't.
it's lost. I don't like. I think Ann Coulter jumped the gun with Audios America, or I mean, somewhat intentional
Oh yeah.
to spread the word. But yeah, it's not over by any means. But it
Um,
is it's just a significant danger. That's all.
I think there could be. I think even like there's still reasonable outs, even if like the US as a country had like, I don't know what would be like catastrophic without being like super catastrophic. Um, I don't know, like Texas secedes and then, the West and East decide to split up or something or other. Um,
But you don't want to know how blue Texas is? It's a border state.
Mm. Fair enough. Um, I didn't even know enough about the general zeitgeist term.
It has a reputation as a red state, but it's the
But
demographics are not looking amazing. Like California used to vote Republican. Um, it's
well, I
just
mean,
it's
to be fair, presidentially, I think yeah, apparently the last time was 76 when they voted Democrat.
yeah, but it's shifting. It's less solid. It's the
Looks like
demographic change is a nasty end run around debate.
yeah,
Anyways, so about ways to affect the halls of power. Another
yes.
strategy, third one, follow the written rules effectively. Um, this is what a little bit of what I hear when you talk about there being specific voting rules in Australia that were favorable that you could use, and then you could play by the rules and get some power and influence and change things and so on. And I think this method does not work as well as people expect it to because the rules are not the rules. The people in power cheat. It's exactly the same as forum moderators, which you saw the less wrong stuff, but I have a lot of experience with other forum moderators. The people in power, if the written rules don't get them what they want, they just do something else. This is a very standard thing, and it definitely applies to governments and like the sort of ruling class type people who have tons of friends in high places and tons of money and whatever. Those people, like, if the rules would let you take power from them, they will change the rules. Or, have your Twitter account banned and take away your ability to communicate with people and take donations and so on. Like, anyone who's a threat gets cancelled.
Yeah, I think the following the rules only works when you can sneak up and then do something very effectively in a short space of time. Otherwise, you're then just back to mass societal change.
Yeah, right. So there's, there can be some opportunities there where you engage with the rules and use them to your advantage in some way, but as a broad strategy, um, the written rules are not the real rules of society. They are
Yeah.
somewhat decoys.
Yeah.
So then the other two I listed are education and science, academia, public intellectual. Like, you can give TED Talks and whatever. And if you try to do that and you're threatening, you are likely to get canceled. And if you're not too threatening, they often try to co-opt you. It's hard to tell, like with Jordan Peterson, how much he was always kind of lefty and how much he got co-opted, for example.
What's he lefty on? Or was that, sorry, what the word you said?
Yeah, he has attacked some. He attacked like Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court justice, for example, of one of the things he got a lot of blowback on because his fan base was very different than him, and but he joined a leftist talent agency that has like basically handlers, which they won't admit to, but yeah, he signed up for these mainstream people will book my speeches and get me an audience, and but I'm part of the mainstream that's not allowed to speak out too much. And he never addressed this concern. So he just acted like it didn't happen and sort of ghosted the issue, which to me is a complete red flag, like that he has no plan for working within the system or whatever. But on the other hand, there is some information about him being a leftist like when he was 20, so
Yeah, okay. I mean, so I don't know, one thing that I've like uh I don't know how much I should expect this. I've sort of like toned back a bit now in terms of uh it factoring into things. I think I'm not happy about people who I respect essentially being on one side of politics and not criticizing the side that they're more on, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I do it like I'm overly critical of
well, the issue
sometimes as
wasn't
well.
that Peterson criticized someone on the right, it was that he wrote extremely biased, unreasonable, unfair leftist tribalism.
Oh, okay. Um, weird. Okay, this is recently.
A couple of years ago.
Okay, that's disappointing.
Yeah, the reason he's influential, by the way, is that he got on Joe Rogan. Like, I mean, it's not the only thing, because people get on Joe Rogan and don't get nearly as popular, but someone huge gave him a huge boost. And,
Mm.
it's not just like pure merit worked his way up, follower by follower. It is managed to somehow social network his way into contact with Joe Rogan. That's like part of how things work. It's not just he put his psychology lectures on his YouTube channel. Like, I think the same lectures on the same YouTube channel. Without the Joe Rogan, he's much less popular.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I can see that. I don't know. I don't know anything that he said on Joe Rogan, but I know that Joe Rogan's like a weird cultural phenomenon these days.
He's the biggest like talk show podcast thing.
Yeah. I mean, I've listened to some like 2.5 hours on like nutrition or something or other. Um, yeah, that
Yeah.
seems
I
somewhat
think
reasonable.
he's I think he's not great, but he's like okay. There's definitely worse things out there.
One thing I do like about him is that he like the impression I get is that he's cluey enough to follow people and ask intelligent questions, but he's not arrogant about what he already knows. And I think that's
Yeah, he
probably
does some
broadly
of that.
appeal.
Anyways, so like with the public intellectual stuff, there's major problems with it, like that I think people don't understand. One is people are willing to call you eccentric. They're willing to say
Mm.
like that he did some great work, but now he's a crank. Like, people will just sort of turn on you after you establish a reputation. That is a known thing, that people are like, they're powerful enough to get away with it and they don't get like their lives destroyed, but on the other hand, no one listens. And there's pressure to not say things that are too offensive, or you just lose your fan base. It depends how you get your fan base, but if you build it up by saying offensive things the entire time, you're not going to lose it by doing more of the same. But it's very hard to pivot. So like David Deutsch, for example, if he says offensive things that are not in his books, then he loses fans, and he loses his contacts with being able to get on podcasts and whatever, and get TED Talks. Like, he feels quite suppressed about what he can say, despite having, a significant reputation and some success and whatever. He's just still very limited, or he thinks he'll just lose it, basically.
Yeah, that's
He thinks that if he talks too much about like TCS or something and gets public attention to it, that people will not only not listen, but stop listening to any new physics ideas like constructor theory. Which I think is realistic. I don't think that that's just like fear. I think that fits pretty well with how the world works.
it feels like what you're describing is sort of this curse of being like capable of broader thought, but being limited in your ability to apply it, and then having to go back to physics because that's the only place that people will accept you long term.
Yeah, and he was careful about what he included in his books. That it was relatively not too offensive.
I mean, I remember reading the what do you call it, global warming chapter, and was like, I thought that would probably offend a bunch of people.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean
really
it's
glad he
somewhat
included it.
offensive, but like
Well,
it's quite different than someone who's going out there and saying that the global warming, it's like Alex Epstein,
yeah,
He's not doing anything remotely like what Alex Epstein's doing. Even though his
no.
views are, fairly similar to Alex Epstein on climate and environmentalism and so on. But he doesn't say that in his book.
To be fair, I think it's only offensive to people who either jump straight to that chapter or who haven't bothered to read much of the, preceding 16, 17 chapters. I think if you've like read the book decently, then it's hard to be offended by it.
Maybe, I don't know, but regardless, it's fairly easy to read the book. People read that book and don't realize, like, very accurately at all what he thinks about global warming. Like, people can read that and think that he just sort of believes the mainstream consensus and is trying to think outside the box a little about solutions.
Yeah, no, it's like, I mean, I don't know. What I took away from it was that the, the dominant approach that society is taking is philosophically flawed, such that we shouldn't expect anything good to come of it, and we should ultimately expect harm. And if we're going to like avoid these problems, it's going to be in the few creative people who try and actually solve problems, as opposed to everyone else who tries to avoid them.
Yeah, one of the things he
Um,
avoided though was he didn't
I mean,
quite
like
come out
cool
and
people.
say the forecast is bullshit and we shouldn't trust it at all. Um, the whole problem is just made up by people who want to control the economy. He hinted that at that a little bit because he brought up global cooling, I believe, and forecast errors some, but he made it pretty easy to read the book and not view him as a climate denier, like, to not put him into that specific category.
Yeah, I don't know what. So I mean, in terms of like, I don't know, climate denier is such a laden word that I don't know what it really applies to, or like anything in that train. Um,
Right. The point is, he did not want to get tarred with that, and he went
yeah,
out of his way to avoid it at the cost of clarity about what he believes and why.
yeah, no, that seems about that.
and lots of other people do similar things, and it's hard to even know that they're doing it, because usually you don't have the same sort of behind the scenes access. Which, it's not just private stuff, because he wrote thousands of forum posts and a political blog that was, anonymous, but he wrote a lot of the posts, and no one was invited to write posts about making claims he disagreed with, basically.
I didn't know that it was anonymous.
The individual posts, the vast majority of posts do not have an author on that specific post. But it's, only people with certain views. It's not like bring in a diverse big tent. It's only a few people, David's friends, basically, got to write anything.
Yeah. That makes sense. One thing that oh no, I've forgotten. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so changing the world is hard. I think, like, better plans. Like, I don't know a good enough plan, so I sort of don't think anyone else does either. I think more understanding what the problems are better. I think people should try to catch up to me on what's wrong with the world, what do we know about it, etc. And after understanding the problems better and catching up on some existing knowledge, like these main authors, and then there's room to try to collaborate on figuring out solutions and what sort of plans might have a significant effect. But most people either get stuck in the learning stage, or sort of reject the learning stage and decide that they're already great and they're going to go off and do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Which generally leads to enough conflict with me, because I disagree with them, that they quit and then just go and do horribly refuted by FI stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, there's some thoughts on that and quitting and stuff, which continues on from stuff I was thinking in 2017. Anyway, I should write those down or something or other. Okay. All right. Well, we're at the hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the world situation stuff is really important, and people should think through it more and understand it more before really trying to decide on what their goals and projects and plans are. And it's tricky. I would have been better off understanding it more, but it's hard because there was no one to tell me. But now I at least have some things to tell people.
It's the one thing that occurs to me, it's a really hard problem to know where to start. Like, if I try and weigh on one hand the stuff that I think I want to do, and then learning about the world, I have no idea how to balance that.
I think learning these authors and learning social dynamic stuff is very useful to a very wide variety of plans.
Cool.
And so that's kind of what we've done with the tutoring. Also, is pretty generic stuff, building up thinking and rationality skills that are pretty plan independent, and help with things like reading what the author said and actually understanding it correctly, and being able to talk about it and write about it coherently, and so on. Because a lot of people need to fill in gaps on skills that are prior to these books. Like being able to actually read sentences more accurately and stuff helps you actually get the right idea, because a lot of people read things and then misunderstand and misread and so on, and so that's a problem.
Yeah.
And if you can get those skills to be a lot more autopilot, then it gets a lot harder to for bias to ruin it. Like, the more you master things and make it automatic, the less room there is for bias, social dynamics, static memes, etc. to screw it up and make you do the wrong thing. So you can get skills to like a really, really solid level, and then even if you're emotional or biased or whatever, it's still hard to get certain things wrong because they're too obvious to you. Like it's the way that even when you're really mad, you can't add 2 and 2 and get 8, even if it would be really convenient for your tribe.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yep.
skill is too ingrained in you, so you make other skills reach that level, and then you're in a better position to start learning about social dynamics and challenging some of your static memes and stuff.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, that list gives me things to do for this weekend, at the very least, if I don't write anything.
Okay, yeah. And if you don't do anything, we can try to debate something and see how that goes.
Yep. Cool. I would like to move towards that anyway, eventually. All right. Cool. See you in 3 days.
Okay, bye.